And of course, it moved that over again. Okay, I think we're recording now. All right. Yep. Okay.
We have a special guest.
It must be. Okay. First of all, I have my uh, agenda over here. The first thing I wanted to do is ask if there are any questions regarding spring, since you've worked on, most of you have worked on lesson 10.
Well, I still haven't got mine to work quite right yet. So,
And who was that, Tina?
yes.
Okay, well, stay on afterward and we'll get it to work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question. And do you understand the difference between a controller and a REST controller?
I'm going to go with no.
Well, you know, how can I say that's the wrong answer? Basic difference between, okay, let's talk about REST a moment. REST is a technology, et cetera, but where basically the server side of the client server relationship does primarily just respond to requests from the client. What I mean by that is it doesn't format screens. All it does is take in a request to return data or to save data to the database or what have you, but it doesn't render a screen. It returns data to the client. On lesson 10, when we use the REST part of the URL, it gave us our response on the screen in the browser, but it was in a JSON format. It was not in a formatted screen. When we use the hello response, the URL, it formatted a screen for us. Okay, so that's the basic difference. REST acts as a server and responds to requests. It used to be that it would most REST controllers would respond in XML, but nowadays the trend is toward using JSON because JSON is so easy to use in a JavaScript program, because that's what JSON is. It's a JavaScript object notation. You can a JavaScript program running in the browser can take that JSON response and it knows exactly what it is. It's a JavaScript variable and its value. That's what it is. And whereas with XML, it had to digest the XML and so forth. So anyway, that's the basic difference. If you're going to respond with like a JSON response, which we will have some of that not this week, but probably in week 14 or lesson 14, will you work with creating a RESTful service and also consuming one. Okay. But in the meantime, we'll be dealing primarily with the controller and dealing with screens. Okay. Now, we underneath our in our folder structure, we like edu.dccd. We'll show you tonight. We'll work with trans. TRANS will be our package, edu.dccd.trans. But within that trans package, we usually create several when we're working with Spring or when we're working with online programs, period. We'll usually create additional folders under that level for controllers, for entities, for services, for repositories, possibly models, what have you. They're called different things for different purposes, but the primary difference is that an entity is usually a Java bean. In the case of the lesson 10, it was that greeting object. Okay, in lesson 11, it's going to be a transaction. And in lesson 12, we'll take that transition and we'll put it into a database. So it'll actually be a database, a row in a database. So that's what an entity is. A service is something that a controller calls to perform some kind of service for it. And we try to keep our services, or I'm sorry, our controllers fairly straightforward, and they don't have a lot of logic in it, but they call services and they call upon repositories to get data and then send it to what is called the model so that the view can create a screen. So a service is where we put all of our code that processes things for us. And then finally, repositories are what we use to get the data. This week we're going to use just a singleton, which is it's just going to be a class, and it's going to hold the records right there in that class, and that's all it's going to do. It's not going to put them in a database. It's like putting them into a list, like we did in previous programs, where we had an entity, and then we had another class that where we kept the collection of those entities. Well, in Spring we're going to do that in a singleton repository, so to speak, and then next week we'll replace that with a repository that actually deals with the database. Okay, time leaf. The lesson 9 we dealt with JSPs, and JSPs can either be very messy or can be very clean depending on how you write them. I've seen a lot of really messy JSPs, so I tend to shy away from JSPs. And as I said a couple weeks ago, the JSP is actually compiled into a servlet the first time it's used. And then anytime it gets changed, Tomcat will recognize that JSP has changed and will regenerate and recompile a servlet that does with the logic of that JSP. With the time leaf, we're dealing with just HTML files that have time leaf tags in them. You saw a simple one of those in lesson 10, where we put our greeting onto the screen, and we used the what do we use? It was a okay. Just I brought it up. I guess I should answer my own question, right? Lesson 10. Come on. Lesson 10 final. Source, main, resources, templates, hello. Of course, if I double click on that, it'll open it in a browser. Open in Notepad. Well, that's going to open it on my other screen. But in that, if you remember, we had an H2 tag, an HTML tag H2 for a heading, and then we had a TH:text equals, and then inside of a pair of double quotes, we put a expression hello plus a $sign and a brace, and then user and a brace. And user was the attribute that was in the model that the view picked up and substituted into the HTML. But other than those time leaf tags that begin with TH:, they're just HTML screens, so you can display them in a browser. You just won't get that value plugged in. So that's the advantage of time leaf, is it's the real HTML and don't require any pre-processing or whatever, and the code is usually very clean. And most Spring people, the people who work with Spring, will prefer time leaf. When Craig Walls was here in July, was it? August, September, I guess it was. Hello. You know, he talked about time leaf and using time leaf, so he's a big advocate of time leaf. So I just wanted to bring that up. So on my screen now, do you see the lesson 11 where it says Spring MVC RESTful Web Services Container?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this little picture I put in here to illustrate a point. Down here is the client. That's your browser. It makes a HTTP request to the Spring Dispatcher Servlet, or front controller it's called also. And we didn't get into that too much when we were in lesson 9, but when you deal with some type of framework, we first one of the first frameworks to come out was called Struts, and Struts used a dispatcher servlet to decide, which servlet was going to get the request to run. But it's a single servlet which sits out front, and sort of everything goes through one servlet, and then it passes the request to the handler mapping, which determines whether it's a get or a put, and which controller needs to get called. And then the controller is called, and it processes the request, and it puts values into the model, and then it returns the value, which is the name of the view that it is to be rendered. And then the substitution values in the model are placed into the time leaf, and it goes back out through the dispatcher servlet to the client as an HTTP response. That's what this diagram means. This is sort of the cycle of how Spring works, and it's very similar. If I were to show you a diagram like this for struts, it'd be very similar to that. There's another framework out there that called Faces, FACES, and it has its own diagram, but it's more complicated than this because Faces is fairly complicated. But anyway, that's the Spring container and so forth. Just a very simple picture. And Here's a tutorial on time leaf. And here's something else on a time leaf view. So here's our assignment. And here are the instructions for the PDF. It has a PDF which has the lesson 11 instructions, which are detailed step-by-step instructions. And here's also a CSS file for you, Bootstrap CSS. Now what this means is it is packed. If you open it up, it'll be very difficult to read because it's not neatly formatted. Everything is compressed to make it as small as possible. But you'll want to download this Bootstrap Min CSS and put it into your static folder under resources. Okay, so now you may want to open these lesson 11 instructions or print them off or whatever, and because I got them open on another screen, and I'm going to go through the first 33 steps and actually start this project for you, with you. So, all right, how do I get this to? I guess that's all the bigger it gets. Okay, so step number 1 says create a new Spring Initializer project. So we're going to create a new project, and it's going to be a Spring Initializer. And then next, we change our group to edu.dcccd, and the artifact is, we're going to call it trans. Now, keep in mind, starting with this project, we're going to work on this same project from now on. Lesson 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 will all be the same project. You will not start a new project again. You're going to keep enhancing this project, and I will show you how we're going to keep track of those different versions in GitHub. Okay, so our artifact is going to be trans. We're going to use Gradle, and we're going to use version 10 of Java. I think, is it Josh, you're using 11?
No,
No,
I don't think so.
no, somebody redid their system or something and lost their Java and couldn't find a version 10. So I told them we'll go ahead and try 11 because I have been using 11 a little bit and it seems to work just fine. And under description, you can leave that alone, or you can maybe change boot to MVC because this is MVC. And our basic package is going to be edu.dccd.trans. So now we're going to go next, and we're going to select DevTools, Lombok, Web, and Timeleaf. And next. Over here, we're going to change this project name. Step 10 says change the project to Transaction App. Okay, now I already have a transaction app on my system that I've been working on, so I'm going to call this Transaction App Intro. But yours will be just Transaction App. And see that it's going to put it in my advanced Java folder and in a folder called Transaction App Intro. And so now we say finish, and down here it says unlinked Gradle project. So I say just click on the. Okay, why won't you?
It's because the window is popped up.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. We want to use auto import, create directories for empty content roots, and then this will be checked, and probably use the default Gradle wrapper. Okay, and I happen to know that there's something kind of screwy on my system, so I have to change this from use project JDK to 10. So, but yours will probably just say 10 there. So I say okay, and now the build :sync operation is starting up, and it's going to create this for me. Let's see. Okay, that was step 15. All right, I think we're done now. Let's see if it picked up the Gradle file. Yep, it did. Good. Okay, so here's our project that we're going to be using. So the next thing that we want to do, step 11 says select VCS and enable version control integration. And we're going to select the version control system, which of course is Git, and say OK. So now down here it says created Git repository in the transaction app intro folder. So now we have put this project under local Git control and created a local repository. So the next thing I've said is create a new file, and I'm going to call it capital README .md for README. It asks you if you want to add the following file to Git. Yes, I do. And in this file, we're going to put a it's basically comments, and we're going to put a pound and a space and transaction app. Just the name of the project. Nothing special, and each week we'll update that. So now I save that, and so that's step 17. Okay, and the next thing is we want to click on View, Tool Window, and Version Control. So we click on View, Tool Windows, and Version Control, which creates us another tab down here on the bottom for version control. And it's going to show that I have the README file is in the default change list, and I have these unversioned files which were created by Gradle. I have a get_ignore file already. I have application properties, build.gradle, Gradle wrapper jar, Gradle wrapper properties. Those are in the Gradle wrapper folder. So on my step 19, click on those two lines, the ones that say Gradle wrapper jar and Gradle wrapper properties, and right click and say ignore, and it says ignore the specific file, and you'll say okay, and now they go away out of the list. And all the rest of these I want to have under version control. So right now I have a very basic project, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's see, check mark right here, which opens up our commit changes window. I'm going to click on everything, and down here in the commit message I'm going to put initial commit, which is fairly standard comment you'll see in GitHub for the first one, and you want to uncheck these two guys. You don't want to perform a code analysis or check a to-do. They'll just cause you grief sometimes. And and then press the commit button. And now all those went away at the bottom, and we had 9 files committed in for the initial commit. Okay. Now I'm going to select VCS, get, and remotes. I don't think I'm really ready to do this, but okay, and there's nothing there. Okay, so now I'm going to flip over here to another screen. Where are you? Okay, here is my WFly37 repo that I created last week, and I'm going to click on repos, and I'm going to create a new repo. That transaction wrap there is yeah, that's good stuff, so I don't want to bother that. So I'm going to create one called transaction app intro. Now, you're going to create the transaction app repository if you haven't already done so. Okay, but again, I already have one. It's got stuff in it, so I'm going to put transaction app intro. And of course, it's going to do a public repository because private repositories cost money, unless you get the GitHub student pack, in which case you can use private repositories. But I didn't even fiddle with that myself. And I'm putting a README file in there, so I'm not going to check that. So I'm going to click create repository. So then the screen that comes up, and this gives me the location of this repository. I click on the little symbol over here, which is copy, and I go back to my project, and I click the plus sign here and paste that URL into the URL. And the name of this branch is the origin, which is where they all start. And we say okay. And so now we have defined what our remote repository is. And that's on GitHub, copy the URL, create a, that's one thing. Step 26 says on GitHub, copy the URL of your new transaction app repository. If you don't have one, create one like I just did, and then you'll have a URL for it. So the next thing I'm going to do, step 27, is again select VCS, get, and push. And so this is going to push this initial commit to the origin master branch. And this shows everything that was committed in is going to be pushed. So I say push. And because I took care of the login last week, I don't have to log in and put the password because it remembers it. So you'll need your GitHub user ID and password the first time you push the project out there. Now, if we go back over here and click on this, here is our basic starter master branch. Okay, this is the stuff I just created. Here's the README file that I just created right in front of you, and it there it is. So, and it says we had one commit and it has a single branch. So, moving right along. So now we have a master branch. So now we go back to IntelliJ, and now watch this carefully. I'm going to click on VCS get again. VCS get, and this time I'm going to branches, and it shows that I have a remote branch of origin/master. We just saw that, and we also have a master origin master here on a local branch. But we want to click on the arrow here next to remote branch, and the first option is checkout. So we check out as, and it came up with master, but I want to make this lesson 11. So now I'm creating the first GitHub branch off of the master. Next week we'll create another branch off of the lesson 11 branch, what we call lesson 12, etc. And that's how we'll keep these separate, because they'll be on different branches. So our new branch name is lesson 11. So we say OK. And now it says check out new branch lesson 11 from origin/master. So now we have a new branch that we're working in. And that's what the branch we're going to use this week. So, and actually, that's okay. And then if we open the source folders, here's our main and our Java, our edu, our dccd, and our trans. You can close that window down there for right now. And within that trans, we have our generated transaction app, which is our main method. This is the way Spring gets started, is that this program gets run and by the JVM, and this main method is executed, and it calls Spring application.run, and which gets it up into Spring, and then it comes back into the transapplication class. See, here's our resources, here's our static folder, and our templates where we put our time leaf templates and our application properties. And then under test, we have the same thing. There's the transaction application tests, which is basically nothing but a context load right now, which all it does is start up Spring, and if everything matches, it can resolve all the what they call Spring beans, etc., and can create them all and waddle wire them together. Then it says okay and shuts down. But it's a good way to check that, you know, everything you have will load correctly. So now step 33 says go to the trans folder and create some new packages. So I'm going to create a package, and the first one I'm going to create is controller. Okay, and the next one, new package and entity. And the next one, repository. This is what I was talking about a while ago. Repository. And the last one is service. And you can make these singular or plural, I don't care. They're, you'll sometimes see them Most of the time you'll probably see them plural, but I told you to create them singular. So, okay, so in here is where we're going to create some code. And that was where I'm going to stop, but what the heck, I can keep on going. It says in the entity package, create classes transaction and selected day. So if I go to entity and right click and create a new Java class, and this is going to be a very important class. You're going to come to hate it probably the next few weeks. There's a transaction class, and of course get pops up and says you want to add it to get. Yes, you do. And I'm going to go ahead and close these those first two things that created. Here's the transaction, and then the other one, new Java class selected day. I'm not sure how important this one actually is, because I simplified this project down considerably for you guys. I hope you appreciate that. This is the actual problem from 2 years ago in Amarillo, and what Mosen used to practice on for the contest. And his does add and change, change and delete transactions. You're only going to be adding transactions. Okay, so we want to add selected day to, and you're not going to really deal with individual days, but it was in here and I didn't take it out. So that's, and add them get, so they're now in, if you look in version control, they're in the change list. Okay. Now step 33 says enter the following into transaction. So come back to transaction and look in the document, and we've got a whole bunch of code here to copy. Whoa, stop right. Come on. Come on. Well, I can't get exactly what I want. The problem, I think, is I'm using the PDF, and the PDF is usually a little hard to deal with. Ah. Hang on, I'm trying to copy just certain stuff, but I can't seem to get the selection to. Well, phooey. All right. The heck with that. Hang on. It's a whole lot easier if you deal with the Word document as far as copying code out of it. So come to here and open up the Word document. Lesson 11 instructions right there. All right. Did I already have it open? Yeah, there it is. All right, now I'm going to move that back over to my other screen where I had the PDF document. Okay. And start right here with this import of Lombok and down through the ending brace and copy. And here is our transaction class. So I come in here and highlight those two lines and paste it. And this is our transaction class. It contains an ID field, which says it's long. We have a time, which is just a string. We have a day, which is a string. And notice the not null and not empty. Those have to do with validation. That, for instance, on the screen, if you just press submit without putting any data in, these fields will come in as null or empty, and it will come back with an error that you entered this, that field is empty. So this has some simple validation in it. We have a description. We have an amount, which is a big decimal because we're dealing with dollars and cents, and float is not a good way to represent dollars and cents. And we have a type, and this type is going to be either revenue or expense. Here's the no argument constructor, which sets the time to current time. And then here's the constructor, and this is not, is this all of them? Yeah, it is. All of the, it has all the fields defined. And then here is the toString. And the toString gets the date and time and returns the new format. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not toString, it's current time. So that's how we get current time. Right here. And right there. And so anyway, that's our transaction class. It probably could be a little bit better, but that'll do. That's what's in the document for you use. And then the other class is much shorter. Selected days. Come on. It's just 3 or 4 lines long. And this returns a list of selected days. And again, I don't think that I really use this. It's probably a total waste because I took some stuff out today, this weekend, and so that's probably not necessary, but it's there. So those are our entities. And that's now through step 36. And so I'll just keep around going for a while. I'm not going to do the whole thing for you because it has like 40 some odd steps. But everything should be right here in the document. So next thing I'm going to do is the singleton transaction class. And copy that. And I'm going to create a new class over here called singleton repository. Now singleton transaction it is. This is singleton transaction. And let me verify something here. Come on. Where's my cursor? There it is. It is, oh, it's, oh, okay. Yeah, it's, I have it in the wrong place. That's okay. It doesn't go in repository. It actually goes, probably could go either place, but I said put it in entity, so we'll put it in entity. Okay. And then I'll highlight these and paste it. All right, so this is in the entity class. It has a big decimal, array list, a list. Here, public static single in transaction instance equal null. This is the constructor. Is that right? Yeah. That's no, that's the constructor down here. This is the declaration of it, and it's static, which means there's only going to be one of them. And here is our list of transactions, and this is the long auto increment ID. What is that? I think that's something else I don't need. I don't think you're going to need that, so I'm going to comment it out, oh, I know what that is. Here in this project is the way that we are going to put a couple of transactions into the database so that when the screen pops up, there's some data there. So these are the first two transactions that go in the database. And that means you probably will need this. It says it's never used, but that's okay. So we're going to create two transactions, and then we're going to add those to this list of transactions right here. So we're going to keep our transactions that are entered in this class. It's not going to go to a database or anything else. They're just going to go in this class and be saved as long as the program's running. So the constructor basically just creates the two transactions and adds them to the list. And here you can get instance. Says if the instance is null, then create the instance as a new singleton transaction and return it. When you deal with a singleton, you'll notice that the constructor is private. That means you cannot instantiate this class through you can't say a new single transaction. What you have to do is call the get instance, static get instance method on singleton transaction, and it creates it internally, as you'll see as you get into the program a little later on. So this is how this class is actually created, by calling get instance, and get instance actually creates this class and puts the two transactions into the list. Okay. And okay, so that's our the three classes that go in to the entity folder. And heck, I could just keep going all night, right? But I want to leave something for y'all to do. I'm up to step 38, and how many steps are there? There's actually 52. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and the next thing that y'all are going to do is create the I think the controllers were next. No, the services. So in the service package, I'm just going to create empty ones. In the service package, you'll create a Java class, and this is a transaction service, and it's actually an interface. So if you come down to this one and click on I, it says interface there. So when you you'll add it to get, that creates an interface, and the code is in the document. And the other the class is going to be called transaction service IMPL. And yes, and this is going to actually, as you'll see from the copy code, implements transaction service. All right. So the code's in the document. And so the next thing you're going to do is create the controllers. At controller, there'll be a single controller, I think. So a new Java class transaction controller, and add it to get. So you see how you do this, and it's all in this document. Cut and paste it right into these classes, etc. When you get down to past the controller, step 40 says in the resources folder, in the static folder within resources, which is right here, you want to where'd it go? Maybe I didn't select the right, there it is, lesson 11. You want to download this Bootstrap class or CSS file, save link, and we're gonna store it into lesson, into transaction app, and you're gonna put it in your transaction app, but I'm putting an intro, source, main, resources. I have to create a Oh, they're static. It's going right there in the static folder. I guess I should open it up like that and save it. So now if I say synchronize, let's go up. You'll see that the Bootstrap min CSS is right there in that folder where it should be in it. And what I was saying a while ago, if you open it up, it's all jammed together. So don't try to read it. We minimize it like that so it loads quicker. So that's step 40. And then you're going to create within the templates folder, you're going to create a fragments folder. So a directory fragments. And in fragments, you're going to create two files, a footer and a header. So a new file, just call it a file, don't call it an HTML file. Header.html, which is just going to give you an empty folder to copy stuff into. And the other one that you put in fragments will be footer. And then in the templates folder itself, you're going to create an HTML file. We have a home and a transaction. Home.html and transaction. Any questions? Transaction. Now, transaction is the big screen that's going to have a form on the left and a list of all the already entered transactions on the right. So, like I said, I could go on all night, but I won't. What I can do is open up, let's see. Open. Okay, there's transaction app singleton. That's close enough. Oh, that's gone. It's been moved. Open. Lesson. Okay. I hate this one screen. It bounces around so much. Okay, transaction app. Now remember this 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 already has lesson 12 in it, so, but I don't think it'll matter because the screen for lesson 11 and 12 are the same. So if I say, well, let's just go over here to Gradle and application, boot run, and run that. I'll show you what the screen is going to look like that we're going to be working on for the next several weeks. The screen actually you'll do this week, and after this week this particular screen will not change. Okay. Like I said, this has lesson 12 in it also. Okay. This is the home screen. Okay, and this has already been updated for lesson 12. Okay, but yours will say lesson 11 spring MVC. This is the footer down here, this little copyright, and the header is the menu up here, I believe. But if we click on start, it will open the transaction screen. And here's the transaction screen. And like I said, this is actually lesson 12 has already been put into this. Here is the form on the left. And here are the transactions that have been previously entered on the right. Now, in yours, there'll only be 2 because they were loaded in that transaction singleton class. This is actually loaded another way, which you'll learn about next week. But I can say revenue, select a day, Thursday, 100, and description, payday, and submit. Waiting for local host. Okay. See how it added that transaction over here as ID number 5. That's basically the same way yours will work. Hopefully by the end of the week. You fill out the form and it will put the stuff over here at the right. Now, by the way, I mentioned those at not null and at not empty. If you hit submit without anything, it puts these error messages up. See? That's what those the validation, the simple validation that we put into this. Okay. Any questions? And now when you get down, get all this code in, by the way, and you get down to 43, you're going to put in a few lines into the application process properties file, and then you're going to run all tests, and assuming that runs correctly, then you're ready to actually test your program. So you'll run the trans application class and check it out. And when it works correctly, etc., the last several steps in the list have to do with version control. So this tells you how to commit the lesson 11 changes, and then push them to the lesson 11. Push it to the lesson 11 branch on the remote repository. That's the last several steps. But you don't want to do all of that until you don't want to go past 45 until you get it working completely. And now Saturday, I will I'll complete all of this for you. And so between now and then, I want y'all to be cut and pasting code into that project, creating the project like I did tonight, and going through the steps and get as much of this code put into the project as possible. And then I'll finish it up on Saturday and show you how to add it to the branch and that sort of thing. Push it to the branch. Questions? Is this not fun? I mean, I know it's challenging and you're probably totally confused, but you know, once you work with this a little bit, you're going to say, wow, this is fun. This is a whole lot more fun than creating simple little Java programs that have a class or two in them, you know.
I think it's pretty cool.
We're actually creating an online application right before your eyes, and I've simplified it, like I said, because if I were to run, well, you can go out and look. I sent you the email a couple weeks ago of Molson's project. It's on Heroku. If you execute, you execute that Heroku project, it'll be a similar screen to this, but you'll see, that project instead of this one, but they're very similar in nature. I got to give Molson credit. He designed this screen with the form on the left and the list of transactions on the right, and I just thought he did such a great job, and I'm just using it. I had several other examples that we could have done for a spring project, but here, what I've decided to do, like I've said, is we're going to create this transaction app. This week we keep the transactions in that singleton class. Next week we'll add Spring data to it, and we'll throw the singleton out, and we'll put an in-memory database into it, so that they'll actually will get persisted to a database. But again, it'll be an in-memory database, and will go away at the end of when you close or restart the application. But it can very easily be changed to use a disk database like Apache or MySQL or Postgres or SQL Server, what have you. All you'd have to do is change the application properties file, and boom, you would be using a database system, which I may do later on. But we're going to keep adding to this, and then next week, as I said, we'll add REST, and we'll do a RESTful service and consume one, which will add another screen to this. Will be a very simple screen, which will display Chuck Norris jokes on it. And then that's the very last project that you'll submit for a grade, lesson 14. Lesson 15 is optional, but again, I'll give you a recipe and like this, and you can go through the steps and set you up a Heroku account and actually deploy this application to a Heroku, and then you will have your own online transaction application that you can show people you did. Cool?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool.
All right. Any questions?
Not yet.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording now, and if there are no questions, and y'all can drop off. And was it Tina needed some help?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Actually, me too. I sent you an email for lesson 10. So
Okay.
is that possible to do it like after this teleconference, or I should wait till tomorrow?
Well, it depends on how late do you want to work. Tina, I think, asked first, so I'll work with Tina for a few minutes, and you want to hang on, you're welcome to.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'm going to stop the recording now if there are no more questions.
Mm.